Hello everyone, my name is Surbhi Bihani and I'm a PhD student in the Proteomics lab at IIT Bombay. Today I am going to talk about how omics technologies have added to our understanding of COVID-19 pathogenesis and host immune response. These are the contents that I'll cover during my presentation. I'll start by talking about how generally our body responds to virus infections. And then I'll talk about a few studies that have that have looked at how the host responds to SARS-CoV-2 infection and how the virus interacts with the host. Finally, I'll conclude with a brief overview of lung pathology in COVID-19 and a summary. So let us begin by talking about the general physiological response to respiratory virus. Now, in order for our body to in order for a body to elicit any response to a foreign pathogen, it has to first recognize it. And virus is an intracellular pathogen, so it is recognized at the cellular level. So first the virus infects the cell, it starts replicating itself, and in the process it forms aberrant RNA or DNA structures that the cell feels it is foreign. These are called pathogen associated molecular patterns. So the cell recognizes these PAMs or pathogen associated molecular patterns by intracellular receptors called pattern recognition receptors. Once these once the virus is recognized by PRRs, it leads to activation of certain transcriptional factors, particularly NF-kappa B, that is nuclear factor kappa B, and IRFs, that is interferon regulatory factors. Now, these IRFs promote the production of, or should I say, induce the production of interferons, and NF-kappa B induces the production of chemokines. Chemokines and interferons are responsible for the launch of general antiviral response. These interferons and chemokines, these are basically cytokines. These are small proteins or mediators, we can say, that bring about the antiviral response. Chemokines are responsible for attracting the immune cells towards the site of infection. So they act as chemoattractants for a number of immune cells like neutrophils, macrophages, T cells, B cells. And interferons, they induce a very potent antiviral state in the neighboring cells. So they kind of warn the neighboring cells that there is an attack by the virus, and they try to induce apoptosis in already infected cells, and they do so by activating some genes which are called interferon stimulated genes. So that is how they bring about their action. Now, but viruses, this puts a lot of pressure on viruses because they also have to survive. So this leads to this has led to the evolution of many viral countermeasures, and that is why the host immune response to viruses is not uniform. And COVID-19 caused by the severe acute respiratory syndrome virus, coronavirus 2, is a rapidly evolving global health issue. And in order to control it, we need to know how the body is responding to the virus, and how the virus is trying to evade those mechanisms of host immune response. So several studies have looked at these two aspects, and let's talk about a few of them. This study by Blanco, Milo, and group looked at the transcriptional and serological profile of COVID-19 patients. Now, this volcano plot over here depicts the differentially expressed genes in post-mortem lung samples of two COVID-19 patients compared with that of healthy biopsies. And it shows upregulation of some genes and particularly MX1, IFITM3. These are ISGs, or interferon stimulated genes that I was talking about. And CCL8, CCL11, CCL2, these are the chemokines. So shows that these genes were upregulated in COVID-19 patients. For the cytokine profiles, they looked at the cytokine profiles of sera of 24 COVID-19 patients, and they found reduced interferon levels in COVID-19 patients. As you can see, it's quite comparable to the control, while a consistent chemokine signature was observed, marked by significant increase in some chemokine levels, especially IL-6 and IL-1RA, CCL2, CCL16, CCL8. Looking at the biological significance of these, to get a feel of the biological significance of these chemokines, let's look at the most prominent one, the IL-6, which has been widely associated with severity and mortality in COVID-19 patients. Now, IL-6 affects a number of processes like antibody production, T cell differentiation. It induces the production of acute phase proteins. It induces megakaryocyte maturation. It inhibits the production of albumin, whereas it induces the production of hepcidin and ferritin. Now, what are the consequences of these processes? Acute phase proteins are represent a hyperinflammatory state that is characteristic of COVID-19. Megakaryocyte maturation leads to increased production of platelets that can be thought of the reason behind coagulation related abnormalities in COVID-19. Albumin sort of maintains osmotic pressure in the blood, and in decreased levels of albumin is responsible for causing edema, swelling and pain, fluid accumulation. This edema in lung is also a prominent feature of COVID-19. Hepcidin and ferritin. Hepcidin is an inhibitor of iron export protein in the cells, and ferritin is a protein that stores iron in the blood. So upregulation of these two proteins sort of alters iron homeostasis in the body, that leads to oxidative stress and cellular damage, which might be responsible for the multiple organ failure in critical cases of COVID-19 These results are consistent with another study that looked at the transcriptome of bronchoalveolar lavage fluid of COVID-19 patients, and they also observed upregulation of certain interferon stimulated genes in the bronchoalveolar lavage fluid of COVID-19 patients, while interferons were uh, were not significantly different from that of healthy patients, from that of healthy individuals. But again, pro-inflammatory cytokines were found to be upregulated. Now, the induction of ISGs without the presence of interferons can be explained by the fact that some some PRRs, the pattern recognition receptors, can directly induce the expression of interferon stimulated genes, but not all. So I think that explains the expression of these ISGs. But now there is mounting evidence that there is this imbalanced immune response to SARS-CoV-2 infection, which is characterized by uh, increased pro-inflammatory cytokines and delayed or no interferon response, because interferons are also important for antiviral activity. Another study looked at the global proteome changes in the peripheral blood mononuclear cells, or PBMCs, from COVID-19 patients, and 726 proteins were found to be differentially expressed, out of which 333 proteins were significantly upregulated, while 393 proteins was significantly downregulated. Again, functional analysis of these dysregulated proteins showed that upregulated proteins were mostly involved in cellular processes like chromatin modification, histone modification, transcription, translation. And this is the case of mild COVID-19 patients. While the downregulated proteins were involved in platelet degranulation, hemostasis, then blood coagulation, megakaryocyte differentiation, again shows what all pathways are affected due to COVID-19 patients and their significance in the pathogenesis of the disease. Further, they looked at the proteome of mild versus severe COVID-19 patients and found that the 209 upregulated proteins were enriched in pathways like neutrophil activation, neutrophil degranulation, while the 157 downregulated proteins were enriched in pathways like T cell immunity and viral regulation of defense response to virus, RNA splicing. The proteome analysis again reveals what all pathways are dysregulated in severe COVID-19 patients. Now, downregulation of proteins involved in T cell immunity this is consistent with the fact that T cell populations are reduced in severe and critical cases of COVID-19, as the green line here is for the severe cases. For the critical cases, and this is significantly low in the graph. So this sort of shows that there is a decline in adaptive immune response in severe patients. Further, a number of proteins involved in coagulation were found to be dramatically upregulated in severe patients. And this explains the coagulation related abnormalities, which are very prominent in severe and critical cases of COVID-19. Now, lastly, this is a multi-study analysis that I performed on my own, because a number of proteome studies have come forth, and so combining all the differentially expressed proteins identified in the studies mentioned here, I did a functional analysis of all those proteins and found the array of pathways dysregulated in COVID-19 patients. So that includes hemostasis, complement and coagulation cascades, leukocyte migration, signaling by interleukins. Interleukins are cytokines. Then there is regulation of cytokine production, extracellular structure, organization, and even cell adhesion. So all these pathways are affected by infection, and looking at these pathways, targeting these pathways, understanding these pathways better would enhance our understanding of how the virus is trying to regulate the host, how the virus is trying to evade the immune system, and these pathways can also be then targeted for therapeutic intervention. Clearly, the virus has to interact with the host proteins to bring about the regulation, and to look at, to characterize how the virus, what all viral proteins interacts with the host proteins. Many studies have tried to characterize the interactome. For this, viral proteins with an affinity tag are expressed in cell line models, and these viral proteins act as bait proteins. In the cells, they interact with host proteins called the prey proteins, and when these proteins are purified, the viral proteins are purified by affinity purification, the interacting host proteins are also co-eluted. Now, mass spec based identification of the interacting proteins leads to the identification of protein-protein interactions and the entire network of host and viral interactions, from where the host proteins that might be interacting with the viral components can be identified. And this is not only fundamental in deciphering the exact molecular mechanisms of infection, of virus infection, also can prove to be very important for identifying drug targets. So this study by Lee et al., they first characterized the intraviral protein-protein interactions by conventional techniques, by Yeast-2 hybrids and co-IP experiments. And they found 58 distinct intraviral protein-protein interactions among 28 SARS-CoV-2 genes. Now, these intraviral protein-protein interactions are also important because proteins work in complexes. For example, NSP7 and NSP8 support the RNA-dependent RNA polymerase function of NSP12. So again, disrupting these intraviral protein-protein interactions can also be an effective uh, uh, therapy to combat infection. Then, using interactomics, this group characterized the SARS-CoV-2 viral host protein-protein interaction network and identified around 286 cellular proteins as to be interacting with the viral proteins. And some of the major host pathways that those proteins were enriched in include mRNA transport and MDA5 and RIG1 RNA sensing signaling. Now, note that this is the viral sensing, how these are the PRRs, protein recognition receptors, MDA5 and RIG1. These are PRRs, and they identify viral, they identify the virus in the cell. So it seems like they are trying to evade the viral sensing only to evade immune response. Further, nucleotide excision repair, protein methylation and alkylation, translation, initiation, all these processes that are very fundamental to cells, to cellular activity. Now, let's look at some prominent host virus protein-protein interactions. Nuclear factor kappa B repressing factor, NKRF, was found to be interacting with NSP10. And NKRF is a transcriptional repressor that controls the induction of interleukin 8. And interleukin 8 stimulates neutrophil chemotaxis. That is, it recruits neutrophils to the site of infection. ORF6 was found to be interacting with TBK1, TANK, and TRAF2, and all these are again involved in signaling pathways that are required to induce interferons and that are involved in NF-kappa B activation. And lastly, this ORF3A was found to be interacting with KIT, and this KIT has been shown to facilitate activation of STATs, which are involved in signaling transduction upon interferon or IL-6 stimulation. So let's talk about one interaction in particular that they proved. SARS-CoV-2 NSP10 targets NKRF to facilitate IL-1 production. They found that the expression of NSP10 significantly promoted mRNA levels of IL-8 in lung epithelial cell line, and the knockdown of NKRF did not significantly change IL-8 production, which means that the promotion of IL-8 levels by NSP10 depended on NKRF. Thus, they put forth a model that NSP10, the non-structural protein 10 of SARS-CoV-2, interacts with NKRF and promotes the production of interleukin 8, and interleukin 8 being a chemoattractant for neutrophils leads to infiltration and accumulation of neutrophils, leading to a hyperinflammatory state in lungs. Another similar interactomic study by Gordon and group characterized the interaction network of SARS-CoV-2. And in their interaction network, ORF9B was found to be interacting with TOM70. And in another study, it was found that ORF9b significantly reduced interferon beta expression, and expression of TOM70 largely rescued this um, uh, interferon beta expression from ORF9b mediated inhibition. Thus, this sort of proves that in ORF9b is involved in inhibiting interferon production. Lastly, this is a brief overview of lung pathology in COVID-19 that can be characterized by this imbalanced immune response that is due to upregulation of pro-inflammatory cytokines and reduced or delayed interferon response, which cause widespread inflammation, and the excessive chemokines leads to excessive inflammation of inflammatory immune cells in the lungs, which leads to tissue injury and damage. In conclusion, disease progression, severity, and mortality of COVID-19 is a multifactorial event with distinct patterns of disease pathology as seen by so many dysregulated pathways. And it is characterized by a lot of complications like respiratory distress, thrombotic complications, hepatic dysfunction, myocarditis, and multiple organ failure. Imbalanced immune response to SARS-CoV-2 infection is defined by robust chemokine and cytokine signature, but very low interferon response, leading to a hyperinflammatory state. There is an array of dysregulated cellular pathways that drive this complex pathophysiology of COVID-19. And SARS-CoV-2 has evolved mechanisms to evade immune evasions and regulate the essential cellular processes by targeting host components. Identification of key intraviral and host viral protein interactions will be fundamental in dissecting the exact molecular mechanisms of infection, and also for strategic development of therapeutic strategies. And better understanding of the host response and viral pathogenesis will be key in developing diagnostic, therapeutic, prognostic, and preventive measures. These are my references. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening.
Thanks a lot, Surbhi, for giving a nice presentation on the COVID-19 topic. Let us take some of the questions from the chat box. Aparajita was asking, what is the significant difference between interactomics and proteomics? Can't we use proteomic approaches to study protein interactions?
I would say that interactomics is a part of proteomics. It's like a niche of proteomics where we characterize the protein interactions. But now again, it's expanding, and people are doing more. People are innovating and doing more with it, because now we have um, now people are even characterizing RNA protein interactions via mass spectrometry based approaches. So it's kind of connected. It's kind of connected, yet it's just integrated, is what I can say.
All right, I think you have given a right view of defining this, but it is actually an interesting question. See, in proteomics, you are looking at all the proteins, right, irrespective of if they're interacting in a group or not, right? So the goal is to identify, if not all, at least most of the protein from that given sample type. But when you're looking at interactomics, you are essentially looking at only those fraction which is interacting, and that
Right.
interaction could be with the protein-protein interaction or protein other biomolecular interaction as well. And that's why then you have to do more of the specialized approaches. For instance, you can just take the mass spectrometer to identify the proteins, but you just can't take the mass spec to do the interaction identification. So that's where you need the IP step beforehand, the precipitation step, right? Or type of affinity cryptography. And likewise, if you're looking at more specialized type of applications for interactomics, you can use array-based platforms when you are looking at, okay, how one protein is interacting with large number of proteins at the proteome-wide scale. So again, the goal is different. Its objective is very specific to only measure how proteins are interacting with each other for the biological phenomenon. And that's actually quite important because of the way proteins work as a group, right, rather than working in individual, and they are quite important for the various pathways as well. And then when it comes to the how a molecule interacts with the small molecules like the drugs and all, then interact also becomes very important. So that's where I think it is a, you can say, sub-discipline of proteomics, but quite important and deserves complete and unit as well.
Right. I think someone has asked to elaborate on the steps involved in proteomics. So I'll just share my screen again. So if you talk about protein-protein interactions, if you talk about protein-protein interactions, the viral proteins are first expressed in cell line model, and by now since viral proteins are tagged with any affinity tag, we can purify those viral proteins by affinity purification, and the interacting proteins will coelute with those viral proteins, and that's how those interacting proteins can be identified by mass spectrometry. Is that okay? Did I answer the question? Or okay, she got it.
Any more questions from the audience?
So Surabhi, I think, given that, we have now several publications coming from looking at disease severity, right? From your readings, what you think is the, let's say, if you have to define three major events which is driving the, disease progression from non-severe to severe, what will be those three key events?
From what I have been reading, I would say that the first of all, these cytokines are responsible for driving the disease pathogenesis, because these are the early response to infection. When I say early response, I mean these are the first line of defense to the virus infection, and they only induce other cells to do their action or other biological function. As I was talking about the functions of IL-6, but that was just one aspect. There are many other cytokines that are upregulated, and it can be thought to be a consequence of like the systemic effect of the cytokines taken together, the effect on the entire system, and this just starts a vicious cycle of events related to blood coagulation or hepatic dysfunction or effects on the heart, whatever. But that is the starting point. because we have second point would be that there are many mild infections and many asymptomatic cases. That could be because there is sort of balanced, or I would say the dysregulation in the cytokines is not much pronounced as in case of severe patients. So that would be the cause of so many mild and asymptomatic cases. And thirdly, I would say adaptive immune response would come into picture. It has been seen that cytotoxic T cells, and are important in clearing the viral functions, and in many mild and asymptomatic cases, their number is pretty good to clear the infection. So in case of severe cases, as we have seen, the number usually declines. In critical cases, the number is very low. So I would say I think these are just 2 points. First is the dysregulated immune cytokine response. The high cytokines cause the various abnormalities associated with associated with COVID-19. The low interferon response would interferons are important for the antiviral effect. They have really potent antiviral effect. And thirdly, the adaptive immune response. So the T cell response, basically, because T cells are also responsible for activating B cells to produce antibodies. So those would be the 3 points, my 3 points.
Nice presentation, and nicely described the very complex system which is going on to progress from disease from mild to severe. All right, Amartya, you can take over.
All right, thank you, sir.
Thanks a lot, Surbhi, for giving a nice talk. Thanks a lot, sir, for clearing our doubts. Let me now present a vote of thanks to Honorable Professor Sanjeev Srivastava, sir, respected Dr. Radhika ma'am, our most valued volunteers such as Dr. Arup, Abhishek, Gitanjali, Aparijita, Skandha, Pallavi, Sukriti, Nitesh, Dr. Priyanka, Joshua, Madhura, Vikalp, Praveen, Shruti and Austin. I, on behalf of Omics Bootcamp and the entire team and participants, let me call it Fraternity of Omics Bootcamp of India, here together, and on my own behalf extend a very hearty vote of thanks to all the speakers for gracing your important work and sharing with us your findings and opinion today.
That's wonderful, Amartya, and thanks to all the participants for asking some very interesting questions, and of course, as Amartya already given the vote of thanks, the speakers who have really made a very good start for this forum. So let us continue this activity over the months and years to come, and I think Dr. Radhika will share more schedule and details to all the participants. We'll make it more interactive group so that actually students get a forum where they can discuss some of these more recent findings and clarify their doubts. I'd like to make it more interactive as you go along, and probably you'll get more comfortable and confident down the line. So I think that's all for this session. So thank you everyone for joining in today, and let's continue this interaction in the weeks and months to come. All right, all the best, and once again, happy Republic Day and enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you so much.